Thank you so much for your time and this, oh my God, outstanding series. I know it was a huge, huge hit overseas, obviously. Now, thank goodness we finally get it. But let's go back because you were just a wee lad when this all happened. When you decided to even just to write the book, what kind of sparked your interest? How did you hear about it? Tell me a little bit about that backstory.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was 5 when the robbery happened, and I lived in Scotland at the other end of the country, so I didn't, well, the other end of the UK, so I wasn't aware of it at the time. I was aware of it as I grew up as a famous robbery, and then 5 or 6 years ago, I spoke to people that were looking at doing it potentially as a film. I did some research within it, and I just thought, well, there's so much more to the story than a film. I wanted to tell it over a much larger canvas. And then, like any television show, it's got a very convoluted and long-standing backstory. But then finally, a couple of years ago, I think I finally found the right take on it. And luckily, the BBC and Paramount agreed.
And there you go. And the rest is history. And because you had so much material for the book, isn't there like another companion while you were doing the series? Because as you were finding that you were doing the series, it's never ending. There's so much going on here.
It's a huge story. I did the series first, and then the researcher Thomas Turner and I had done so much work. We had this vast document that I was writing the show, we said, oh, maybe we should turn this into a book. So we did the book sort of off the back of it. But no, there's a huge amount of story, and without sort of going beyond what I'm permitted to say, I hope there's a good chance that we get to tell more of that story in television form, put it that way.
Yeah. Well, looking at how it's been received in the UK for sure, and I think here too, it's riveting. Okay, so
Thank you.
First episode we have the heist. We're right in there. We find out what happens, but the basis of this whole series is really what happened to the gold, how they were able to manipulate it, and it's just mind-boggling. Tell me a little bit about, because you had the opportunity to actually speak with Mickey McAvoy, one of the robbers. What was that experience like, and how did that kind of help develop everything that you've given us?
Well, I spoke to a number of people involved. I think the biggest, in terms of instructing the writing of the show, Brian Boyce, who was the head of the police investigation, who's still alive in his mid-80s, he was played by Hugh Bonneville.
Yes.
I tracked him down, which wasn't easy, spoke to him many, many times, and that was very helpful. But I spoke to lots of different people, some of them officially, some of them unofficially. And Mickey McAvoy was an interview that happened very, very late in the process and was unexpected, and came about through surprising means, and was the only interview he's ever given. He was the lead robber. And it was really interesting. He died sadly about 2 months later. And he was, they're old men. I mean, that's the thing. When I spoke to the people involved, they're kind of trapped in time in the infamy of the crime in the early 80s. But when you speak to these people now, a lot of them are very reflective, at the end of their lives and near the end of their lives, talking about the case. Mickey McAvoy, if I'm honest, he's a man who's certainly committed crimes, and he committed crimes of violence as well. But I found him quite a dignified presence, to be honest. I think he was very honest in the conversation we had, because the thing about the criminals involved is there was these different spheres of criminality, and the McAvoy, the robbery gang, I'm not saying they certainly weren't saints, but they were straightforward, professional, committed criminals who they'd pursued a life of overt crime, and getting caught in prison was just part of that potential profession. But what happened with the Brink Smart story is you went into these murkier worlds. So the robbers stole the gold, didn't know how to get that gold back into the market. So they had to go to this second circle of criminality, who were the kind of the gold chain. And they were people who had businesses. They were gold traders, precious metal people. They had businesses. They had 1 foot in criminality, 1 foot in commerce.
Exactly.
And they knew how to reconstitute the gold and disguise it and sell it back into the market. They knew how to do that. But then this vast amount of money came out as a result. They didn't know how to launder the money. So they went to this third world of criminality, who were white collar, overtly respectable legal and financial members of society,
Yeah.
and they laundered the money. So there's these levels of criminality, I think, that are fascinating.
Oh, 100%. And then you look at this cast that you have amassed for this show. Okay, well, let's just start with Hugh Bonneville. I mean, obviously, we all love him from Downton Abbey, but I mean, the guy's been acting for a million years. But also for him to have sat down with you and the
Brian.
police officer that he plays, Brian Boyce. What a gift that must have been for
Yeah,
the three of you.
I think it was very helpful for Hugh. You know, I met Brian a number of times. He was very happy to meet Hugh. We had a long lunch at Brian's club in London, and it was I think it was extremely helpful for Hugh. It's interesting, on the set there would just be little touches from him where I realized he'd picked it up from Brian, maybe a bit of movement or a little tick or a little voice thing. I think Hugh's performance is absolutely brilliant. I think he really anchors the show, and it was something very different from him, a different kind of performance, I think, from Hugh.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, as I was watching the story, and I had known a little bit about it, but obviously you go into so much detail here in this series. That's why I love so much about it. But when you think about it, like you take a block of gold, you give it to somebody, they melt it down, and then they start, you know, to me it sounds, you know, crazy, I think, right? I don't know.
It sounds what? Sorry.
Who's gonna know?
Yeah, who's gonna know? Well, I mean, the crazy thing when they sold the gold back into the market is that it was one of the buyers for it was the people who'd lost it in the first place. So Johnson Matthey, who owned the gold that was stolen, ended up buying back their own gold once it was disguised and sold back into the market. I mean, the thing is, it's like a lot of the crimes you look at in the 1980s, it couldn't happen now. There's new checks, there's new balances and new systems.
For sure.
Because there's a simplicity to a lot of the things that happened that are really interesting and really, you know, dramatically as a dramatist, it's nice. It's just people. It's people tricking people lying to people. It's all very human based. There's no technology to it, you know.
Exactly. And then, like you say, once it gets up the chain, you know, people you trust, people you do business with, like it's mind boggling to me, this whole thing. But you've done such an amazing job putting this all together. And like I said, I do hope that there will be more. As you say, there are so many more stories to tell. But this isn't your only foray. You know, you've got a production company. You've write a lot of stuff. I know that you have a biopic coming out about Samuel Beckett.
That's right.
Fascinating to me because I remember studying him, of course, in high school, and I just love it. And then you've got Gabriel Byrne playing.
Yeah.
I mean, what can you tell me about this series or this film?
Yeah, I'm really excited. It comes out in November. It's headlining at the San Sebastian Film Festival in a couple of weeks, where it's going to get its premiere. But it's a biopic. I wrote a short film about Samuel Beckett a number of years ago, and I became aware while I was researching it, there'd never been a Beckett biopic. And this is a man who had a fascinating private life.
Yeah.
And I pitched it, and it, like all film developments, it kicked about for years. And then James Marsh, the director, came on board, which helps a lot. Then Gabriel Byrne came on board, which helped even more. And suddenly it was a real thing, and getting into production, and Aidan Gillen's in it, and Maxine Peake, you know, Finn O'Shea's incredible cast.
Oh yeah.
It's a kind of small film by design, but I think it's really beautifully shot, beautifully acted, and it's hugely exciting for me. My first film, the fact that it's actually going to be in cinemas and in the winter is amazing. So I'm really excited about that.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing that here over in Canada. I hope we get it. I'm sure we will. And congratulations on this series. Like I said, it's so riveting, and you can't tell enough of this. It just is mind boggling. Every episode I was watching was like, what? But thank you for bringing it to us. We really, really appreciate it here in Canada. And it's been my pleasure to have the opportunity to talk to you today, Neil. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Lovely to meet you. Thank you.
Okay. Take care. Have a nice day.
Same to you.
Bye-bye.